He says he'll marry whoever can play the piece built to break professionals, and the whole room laughs like the answer is already decided. That laugh sounds familiar. Being the reason for it has happened before. Both hands stay full of empty champagne flutes. Something else entirely fills the chest above them. 6 years went into teaching this body to take up less space than the talent inside it. Tonight, for reasons still unclear, the body stops listening. Somewhere under these ribs, a door shut a long time ago creaks open just a little, just enough to let the cold air through. No decision gets made to walk toward it. Feet make that choice on their own. If you've ever known exactly what you were capable of and kept it folded small so no one else would have to feel it, stay a while. This one's for you. The morning starts the way every morning starts, counting things that belong to someone else. 62 wine glasses. 40 place settings. 1 cello, tucked under a moving blanket in the back of the linen closet, resting there since the night it got carried in through the service entrance 11 months ago and never found its way back out. The closet stays closed today. Opening it has stopped being an option. The estate wakes up in pieces. Water running 2 floors up. A vacuum starting somewhere down the east hall. Sabine, the other morning maid, humming something tuneless while straightening napkins that are already straight. Mornings here belong to people like this, and that's exactly why they're worth liking. By 10, the caterers arrive. By noon, the flowers. By 2, the house has stopped belonging to anyone who works in it. "You're doing that thing again," Sabine says, passing by with an armful of tablecloths. "What thing?" Standing very still and looking at nothing very hard. A nod goes toward the ballroom doors, propped open for the delivery crew. Past them, roped off with a velvet cord like something dangerous, sits a cello case that wasn't there this morning, gold light catching along the curve of the wood. Something complicated happens in the stomach. "It's for the concert," gets said, like that explains this particular way of looking at it. Sabine gives that familiar look, patient and a little sad, the look of someone who has decided not to ask a question they already suspect the answer to. Then she's gone down the hall, the light still doing that thing to the wood, and walking the other direction takes real effort. A good instrument tells you the truth whether you want to hear it or not. Father's line, said the way other men say grace. Understanding took years better spent elsewhere, and now understanding comes too easily. The guests start arriving at 5. Enough gala nights have passed that this one could get catalogued in a state of sleep. The cars first, long and black and silent, then the coats, then the faces, arranged into the particular blankness rich people wear when they are being looked at by someone they have decided not to see. Coats get taken. Glasses get refilled. Apologies leave the mouth for complaints that were never anyone's to fix. Laura Myers arrives at the appetizer table a little after 6. Beauty comes easily to her, the specific, expensive kind that takes money and time and other people's hunger to build. Her gaze runs over the uniform, the hands, the hair already coming loose from its pins, and a smile follows like something's been saved up for the occasion. "I didn't know they let anyone serve now," she says, to the 2 women beside her more than to me. "As long as they can carry a tray, I suppose." The women laugh. One of them isn't even looking over when it happens, already moving toward the next conversation, like the joke is disposable, like the target of it is too. Heat climbs the neck before anything else registers. The mouth says an apology, offers to bring something, before the mind has finished catching up to how little any of it is meant. Laura's smile widens like satisfaction. She moves on. A second too long passes standing there, tray balanced, face arranged into the shape practiced for exactly this. The practicing is the part that lands hardest, more than the words did. Making that shape costs almost nothing now, when it used to cost everything. An old man in gardener's clothes, the only person in this room in something other than silk, catches an eye from near the terrace doors. Otto has worked these grounds for 30 years. Sympathy doesn't show on his face. A single nod arrives instead, the way you'd acknowledge someone who'd survived something. "Your father," he says once the distance closes, "used to say the same thing." not saying anything. Not out loud. He goes back to the roses he's pretending to check. Swallowed it the same way your father. Whole room full of people who'd never worked a day, and he'd just fold up smaller and smaller until you couldn't tell there'd ever been a man that size in the room. Nothing comes to mind that could answer that. Cello's a big instrument, Otto says, not looking up. Hard thing to make disappear. That sentence is still turning over in my chest when the room changes. No announcement precedes it. That's the part registering first, that a king can enter a room and the air simply rearranges itself anyway, conversations dipping half a register, spines straightening without anyone deciding to straighten them. Enzo Avicii has always been the kind of name that gets heard about the way weather in another country gets heard about, real but distant, nothing that touches an actual life. The Whispers built something entirely different. Not loud, not cruel-looking, nothing so easy. Greetings get accepted through the room with a specific courtesy of someone counting the minutes until stopping becomes allowed. That gaze passes over the staff the way every guest's gaze does, a wall being walked beside, furniture being careful not to trip on. Then it stops. Right here. Less than a second. Long enough to land somewhere under the collarbone, cold and precise, like the first note of something. Eyes drop to the tray. When they lift again, greeting someone else has already begun, laughing already at something a donor has said, already exactly the same as a moment ago. Imagination seems like the safer explanation. The hands, refilling the nearest glass, stay unsteady enough to make that hard to believe. Somewhere behind, past the propped-open ballroom doors, the cello sits in its case under the velvet rope, waiting for a stranger to come and play it beautifully, and then be forgotten by morning. Sabine caught this particular gaze once already tonight, and no second look follows. Its exact location stays fixed anyway, the way every dangerous thing in this house has stayed fixed since childhood, since someone first said not to touch them. The strings, a strange question arrives, unbidden. Kept in tune or not. Odd. To wonder that, standing in a ballroom full of people who have decided furniture is the right word here, holding a tray meant for 6 more hours of service, having just felt a king's eyes rest on this spot for less time than it takes to blink. Somewhere under these ribs, that door creaks again. It stays shut. Not yet. But for the first time in longer than memory holds, no one slams it either. That door stays open. Fighting it shut no longer feels necessary. Nobody in this ballroom would notice the difference. Not Laura Myers refilling her own glass of contempt, not the caterers moving trays like a current running against me. But the difference registers anyway, a new kind of quiet settling in, the quiet of a held breath instead of the quiet of a held tongue, and it carries through 2 more hours of service like something that might spill. The virtuoso arrives at 8. He is announced the way people like him are always announced, a title before a name, and the room turns toward him the way sunflowers turn, automatic, hungry for whatever he's about to say. He stands beside the roped-off cello case with the specific ease of a man who has never once in his life carried his own tray. The Concerto of Masters, he says, and lets the words sit there. Elgar Zake. Bach's architecture. Shostakovich's teeth. He smiles like he's said something clever. 3 careers have ended under this piece, to my knowledge. Not because the notes are difficult. Notes are always difficult. Because the piece asks you to be honest in front of strangers, and almost nobody survives that. Laughter, the polite kind, moves through the crowd. My hands go still around the tray. Nobody survives that. My father's shop comes back whole and sudden. The smell of rosin and old varnish. The way he'd test a repair by playing something small and true before he'd let the instrument leave his hands. He never played for anyone. He played to find out if the thing in front of him was telling the truth yet. Holding a bow for the first time happened at 11. Hearing him play anything for the last time happened at 17, 3 weeks before the shop closed, for months before he stopped getting out of bed at all. That thought gets set down the way you set down something hot. The king is seated near the front now, one arm draped along the back of a chair he isn't using, listening to the virtuoso with an expression hard to read from this distance, somewhere between boredom and something sharper underneath it. A donor beside him laughs too loudly at something. Enzo Avicii doesn't laugh. He watches the room the way tables get watched before clearing, cataloging what's broken, what's about to be. Fewer than 20 women alive, the virtuoso says, could complete it without collapse. That's when the king speaks. His voice doesn't rise. That's the thing that lands hardest, the thing that will stay longer than the words themselves. No volume required. The room simply stops making noise for him, the way a house goes still when a forgotten tap finally gets shut off. If any woman here can play it start to finish without a mistake, he says, turning his glass slowly by the stem, I'll marry her. For one full second, nothing. Then the room breaks open with laughter, real laughter this time, delighted, cruel in the way only rich laughter can be cruel, easy and without cost. Someone claps. A woman near the front says something about which of them should try, and 3 others laugh harder at that than the joke deserves. Laura Myers presses a hand to her collarbone like she's been personally flattered by a joke that had nothing to do with her. The tray in my hands holds glasses that are all, suddenly, too full. Nobody moves toward the cello, roped off under its velvet cord like something too dangerous to touch, though every person laughing at that joke could buy the instrument outright and never think about the cost again. The laughter itself is the tell, standing there at the edge of it. It's the sound of people who have never once had to prove they belonged in a room. Trying was never required of them, so laughing at the idea of it costs nothing. Trying has filled most of my life. Only the quiet kind, the kind no one bothers to name. The door under my ribs opens wider. The tray goes down on the nearest table. No decision precedes it. That's the part that will resist explaining later, not to Sabine, not to Otto, not to the version of me lying awake afterward turning the whole night over like a stone that won't stop needing its underside checked. My hand simply stops carrying the tray. The glasses catch the chandelier light and throw small gold coins of it across the tablecloth, and for a second that light holds all the attention that should be going toward what I'm about to do, because watching myself is more than I can manage right now. The room hasn't noticed yet. That's the strange mercy of it. One more second of being furniture remains before furniture stops being the word for this. The cello case sits under its rope less than 30 feet away. My father's voice returns low, from a kitchen that smelled like solder and old wood. A good instrument tells you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. The instrument seemed like the whole of his meaning once. Standing here with empty hands for the first time all night, both halves of it come clear, the cello and the girl holding it. Both built to carry more than either was ever asked to. Someone near the front says, surely one of you ladies wants to be the next Mrs. Avicii. And the laughter rises again, brighter, meaner, and underneath it comes something else. My father, testing a repair, 3 careful notes, waiting to see if the wood would hold. Walking starts on its own. Not fast. Not for effect. 1 foot and then the other, across marble that has never once in 11 months felt like something I was allowed to walk on like this, upright, unhurried, like a destination waits ahead instead of something to fetch. The laughter behind me falters first, then stutters, then stops in pieces, table by table, as people notice a maid crossing the ballroom floor toward a roped-off cello like she has any right to it. Someone says my name. Sabine probably, though turning around isn't an option right now. The velvet rope meets my hand. For one held breath, the whole room is nothing but the sound of my own pulse and the particular, specific silence of 200 people deciding, all at once, not to laugh anymore. The rope lifts. The cello remembers what I try to forget, and standing there with my hand on its case, so do I. Getting this far in a story is its own kind of choosing. What happens the moment the bow touches the strings is the reason this one exists at all. There's more just ahead worth staying for. The rope is still in my hand. Letting it fall isn't something I remember doing. Sitting down isn't either. But the case is open now, and the cello is out of it and resting against my shoulder like it never left, like 11 months in a linen closet was the aberration, and this is the fact of things. The room has gone quiet in a way no room has ever gone quiet around me before. Not polite quiet. Not the hush before a toast. This is the quiet of 200 people holding their breath at the same time, waiting to watch something fail. None of them get a glance. The wood gets my attention instead, the particular grain of it under the chandelier light, and my father's hands come to mind, checking a repair, unhurried, certain, the way you'd check on someone sleeping. My hands do the same thing now without permission. They test the strings. They find the bow. Somewhere behind me, close enough to feel more than hear, someone whispers, she doesn't even know how to hold it right. Wrong, and not by a little. Knowing exactly how to hold it has been true since 11 years old in a shop that smelled like rosin, and knowing it now, in front of strangers who've already decided what I am, costs something different than knowing it ever cost before. The bow settles against the string. For one full second, nothing moves. My arm won't go. Every year spent making myself small stands in the room all at once, asking what exactly this is supposed to accomplish. Then the asking stops. The first note comes out low and certain, and it doesn't sound like an apology. That's what undoes everything. Hearing it land in a room built to swallow people like me whole and not shrink on the way out. Elgar first, the ache of it, the long grieving line of it, and my shoulders finally do what they've wanted to do for 6 years, which has come down from around my ears. The laughter behind me is gone already. That much can be felt more than heard, the specific texture of silence changing, disbelief losing its grip, and becoming something with no name yet. The second passage arrives, and muscle memory takes over where thought used to be, the particular hesitation before a phrase resolves. The place where a note gets to bend instead of land clean, because clean isn't always honest. My father used to do that, on instruments that weren't even his, testing them the way you'd ask someone a question you already suspected the answer to. Somewhere in the third row, a woman in gray has stopped fanning herself. Her face catches mine without any effort at finding it, the way a face in a crowd sometimes gets caught and remembered later without knowing why, and something in her comes apart very quietly, her hand pressed flat against her own sternum, like she's holding something in. Her name stays unknown. Her face won't be forgotten by morning, not the way most of this room will be. Bach comes next, the part that used to shake in practice, alone, with no one watching but the dust in my father's shop. No shaking happens now. That's the part that will resist explaining later, not to Sabine, not to anyone. Whatever fear got carried into this house 11 months ago has gone somewhere between the first note and this one, and its leaving went unnoticed. For exactly one measure, my father's face comes back, the last time he heard something whole come out of these hands. He didn't say anything. He just closed his eyes, the way you do when you've heard proof of something you already believed. The memory costs plenty. My throat goes tight enough that the next note nearly breaks under it. It doesn't break. Shostakovich comes last, all teeth, exactly the way the virtuoso promised, and the room leans in instead of away, close enough now to hear breath being held in unison, a held note of their own. My arm aches. My fingers have gone past pain into something with no name. One clear thought arrives in the middle of the hardest passage. Stopping right now would still have been worth it. Stopping doesn't happen. The final phrase arrives like something chased for an entire life, without knowing the finish line had a shape. The last note gets to ring longer than it needs to, longer than is polite, because politeness has cost 6 years already, and tonight, just once, exactly the right amount of space gets taken up. The sound dies into the chandelier light. Nothing happens. That's meant precisely. Not applause. Not laughter. Nothing. 200 people and the particular, specific silence of a room that doesn't know yet what it just watched, or worse, knows exactly what it watched and hasn't decided what to do about it. My eyes lift. Enzo Avicii is on his feet. The moment he stood goes unremembered, somewhere in the third movement, while nothing but the wood in these hands held any attention, and now he's simply upright among a court that hasn't moved at all, every one of them frozen in the particular stillness of people waiting for permission to feel something. He isn't applauding either. He's looking with the exact expression my father used to wear at a repair the moment before he'd say it's ready, that split second of recognition that arrives before the words do, and something in my chest, already stretched thin from everything just let out of it, pulls tighter instead of looser. Nobody in this room is laughing anymore. Nobody is clapping either. The bow stays resting against the strings. Every part of me finally, terribly visible, and understanding arrives, in a silence that stretches 1 second longer than any silence should be allowed to, that something has just happened that can't be undone by setting the cello down and picking the tray back up. The door under my ribs isn't creaking anymore. It's open. Putting the cello back in its case is a task for my own 2 hands. Nobody stops me. That's the thing about silence that big. It doesn't know how to ask you to stay, and it doesn't know how to let you go gracefully either, so it just watches the latches close under hands that won't quite steady, and doesn't do anything about it. His eyes stay uncaught this time. Whatever was in his face when he stood, tonight has already handed over too much of its own to make room for a second helping. The service hall gets the case instead of the closet. Examining why isn't necessary. Feet make decisions on their own now, the way they decided to cross the ballroom floor an hour ago, and by the time the reasoning catches up, the destination is already an overturned crate in the dark by the delivery entrance, the cello across my knees like something rescued from a fire. My hands are shaking now. They waited until it was safe to. They press flat against the wood until they stop. Sabine finds this spot 20 minutes later and doesn't say anything about the ballroom, doesn't ask what any of it meant, just sits down on the crate beside mine and hands over a glass of water, like that's the only thing either of us needs to discuss tonight. The water goes down. My throat has gone raw in a way that has nothing to do with singing. They're still talking about it in there, she says. I don't want to know what they're saying. I wasn't going to tell you. She looks over sideways. You look like someone who'd been holding their breath for 6 years and finally let it out in the wrong room. A laugh comes out wrong, closer to the sound the water made against the glass than anything resembling amusement. Is that what it looked like? That's what it looked like. The rest stays untold. The part about my father's hands, the part about the last time he played. Some things only get spent once, and that one already went to a room full of strangers who won't remember this face by Monday. Wrong, as it turns out. The whole shape of a thing becomes clear only later, once the piece being stood inside of at the time gets replaced by everything that came after. Enzo Avicii does not come find me that night. None of that registers yet, sitting on this crate in the dark. Most of what gets known about him now arrives after the fact, pieced together from what Otto lets slip weeks later while trimming roses that don't need trimming, from what Sabine hears from the house staff, who hear it from people who actually know. A name gets requested from his household before the guests have finished leaving. Not loudly. Not the way a king might be expected to demand something, some hand closing around a wrist, some voice raised over the noise of a party ending. The asking happens quietly, the way most things about him seem to happen, to the one person whose job is to already have the answer ready. The answer takes 3 days to become a folder. That folder stays unseen. Its existence only becomes known through what Otto lets slip, trimming a rose bush that was fine yesterday and will be fine tomorrow, not looking over while he does it. They went by the old shop, he says. The one your father ran. The shears go still. Who did? Somebody working for the king. Asking questions. Old customers. The landlord who bought the building after. He clips a stem that didn't need clipping. Wanted to know why it closed. A long moment passes without a word. The roses smell the way roses always smell here, sweet and slightly too much, and underneath it, faint, the mineral smell of the fountain nobody's cleaned this month. Noticing the smell is safer than noticing what else is happening underneath it. Why would he care why it closed? I say finally. Otto's look carries the particular weight of a man who has decided how much truth he's willing to hand a person today. Man like that doesn't send someone digging into a stranger's dead father for no reason. No answer follows that isn't dangerous to say out loud. What Otto doesn't say, what only becomes known much later, long after the story has a different ending than the one feared tonight, is what happens 2 nights after the gala, past midnight, in the wing of the house nobody uses, because nobody remembers it's there. The cello lives in the old music room now, the one with the broken skylight that lets in more weather than light. Once the house is finally asleep, it gets carried there for things nobody asked for, unpolished things, half-remembered things, the same 3 bars of a lullaby my father used to hum while he worked, over and over, because the rest of it never got learned, and there was never anyone left to teach it. He's standing outside the door. Nobody mentions this at the time. Sabine has it from the head housekeeper, who happened to be in the hall that night on an errand that took considerably longer than it should have, and that's how the story finally reaches me. Enzo Avicii, king of a court that has never once in its history bent for anyone, stands in a drafty corridor at 1 in the morning listening to a maid play 3 unfinished bars of a song she doesn't even know the ending to, and does not knock. No announcement gets made. No summons get sent. He listens the way you listen to something you're not supposed to be allowed near, and when the lullaby stops unfinished the way it always stops, he stands there a moment longer in the cold before turning and walking away without a sound. That, according to what finally gets told, is the moment something in him decides to wait. Not to approach. Not yet. Whatever the ballroom performance made him feel, whatever made him rise to his feet without applauding, this is different, quieter, harder to walk back from. A lullaby played to no one for no one, simply because the person playing it couldn't stop herself. None of it registers while it's happening. Only a stillness in the house gets noticed some nights, sitting in that broken skylight room with the cello against my shoulder, a stillness that doesn't feel empty the way it used to. Imagination seems like the likelier explanation. My hands, picking the lullaby back up from the beginning every single time, don't seem to believe that either. Imagining it stops on a Tuesday. That's the day the broken skylight room turns up with the cello gone. Not lost. Not moved by a careless hand during cleaning. Gone. The case gone with it. The corner of the room where it's lived for 2 weeks bare in a way that drops the stomach before the mind has finished cataloging what's missing. Standing there stretches long enough that the light through the skylight moves visibly across the floor. Then a replacement comes into view. A different case. Better leather, the kind that doesn't scuff, sitting where the old one used to sit like it grew there overnight. Both hands shake again before the latches even open, some kind of knowledge arriving in the body faster than the mind can process it. Not father's old repair, this one. New. Not new in years. The wood has the deep, settled color of an instrument decades old, but new to this room, restored with a patience that tightens the chest before the bow ever touches the strings. Someone has replaced the pegs. Someone has re-haired the bow. Someone has done, to this instrument, everything father would have wanted done to his own hands, if the chance had ever come. There's no note. The case gets checked twice. The lining, the little pocket meant for rosin, the space under where the neck rests. Nothing. Just wood and strings and the particular silence of a gift that doesn't want to be traced back to anyone. A long time passes with the instrument resting there before a single note gets played. The sound it makes is the sound of something that has been waiting to be woken up properly for years, warm and even. No buzz in the low strings the way father's old repair always had. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Whoever did this spent real money and real hours on an instrument belonging to a woman who empties ashtrays for a living. Otto comes to mind first. Money wouldn't stretch that far for a groundskeeper and reach even less so, but a name might still be within reach. Not this time, or if it is, keeping a face still has never looked this practice before. Wasn't me, comes the answer. No glance up from the hedge being trimmed. Wish it had been. Sabine gets asked next in the kitchen, over coffee neither of us is really drinking. She goes quiet in a specific way, the way people go quiet when they know something and have decided it isn't theirs to hand over. You know something, gets said out loud. I know you should probably stop asking people, she says, and start asking him. The name doesn't need saying. Whose door that question leads to is already common knowledge between us. Looking for that door isn't the plan, not for 3 full days. The way plans get made around things already stopped believing. And then, on the fourth evening, linens in hand down a hall with no real reason to be walked. The corner turns and there he stands, at a window that looks out over the grounds, one hand resting against the frame like the wood has been grown into over time. Turning back seems briefly possible. It doesn't happen. You're avoiding the music room, he says, before anything gets said at all, eyes still on the window. Sabine tells the house staff things without meaning to. I'm not avoiding it.
A lie.
The linens get gripped tighter, an argument on someone's behalf if the talking stops. I've had work. Every day this week. Yes. Interesting week for it. The linens go down on the nearest table, hands finally free of something to hold onto too hard. You have somewhere better to be than a hallway. I do, he says. I find I don't want to be there. The silence that follows isn't uncomfortable, which is somehow worse than if it had been. It's the kind of silence two people build together on purpose, both parties circling the actual question, both aware of the circling, neither willing to be the one who breaks first. I break first. There's a cello in the music room that isn't mine, I say. Restored. New pegs. New hair on the bow. No note. Is that a complaint? It's a question. He finally turns from the window. The light behind him does something unfair to the shape of his face, and looking away now would answer a question better left unasked, so the gaze stays fixed where it is. What's the question? 6 years have passed without asking men like this direct questions. 6 years spent staying small enough that direct questions never became necessary. Something about the way that cello sounded this afternoon, warm and whole for the first time in years, has used up whatever was left of that particular habit. Was it you? I say. He doesn't answer right away. That undoes more than anything he could have said, the length of the pause, the way it gets left there instead of rushed to fill with something easier. Does it matter who? He says finally. Or does it matter that it's played? It matters who. My voice comes out steadier than expected. I don't accept things from people I can't name. Something in his face shifts, not softening exactly, more like a door easing off a latch it's been holding shut out of habit rather than necessity. Then you should know it was me. The hallway doesn't get any quieter. It was already as quiet as a hallway gets. But something in the chest does, some old machinery finally allowed to stop running for a second, standing there with empty hands for the second time since this particular meeting, no tray, no linens, nothing left to hide behind. Why? I ask. Because I heard what that instrument was capable of, he says, before I heard you play a single true note on it. And I wanted to know what happened when the two stopped being separate. No answer comes for that. None seems expected. But looking away doesn't happen either, and for the first time since a tray got set down on a ballroom table 2 weeks ago, the silence between us feels less like something to hide inside, and more like something chosen on my own. None of this gets told to anyone. Not because it's a secret exactly, because something stayed truer if they don't get handed out for other people to hold. Work resumes the next morning the way it always has, and if the trays get carried with steadier hands than before, if the apologizing slows down when a glass isn't cold enough, no one comments on it. No one except Sabine, who watches for 3 days with an expression finally recognizable as someone waiting to see if a thing is going to last. It lasts 3 weeks. Long enough to start believing in it a little. Long enough that the music room stops feeling like a place to sneak into and starts feeling like a place with a real claim on it. Foolishness has its limits, and believing a king and a maid add up to something simple isn't among the things still standing. But the 3 weeks get kept anyway, because 6 years of refusing smaller things than this have already gone by. The second gathering is smaller than the gala. A private dinner, old families only, the kind of room where everyone already knows everyone, and the wine gets poured without anyone asking its price. Guest status isn't the plan tonight. Refilling glasses at the edges of it is, same as always, except this time Enzo's eyes get caught across the room twice in 1 hour, and neither of us pretends otherwise. That's when Dominic Dewsbury walks in. That face gets known before anyone says the name. It has been known since 17, standing outside a shop with a padlock on the door that used to open at 6 every morning without fail, watching a man in an expensive coat tell the landlord it was simply good business. 10 years have passed since that face last appeared anywhere close. The body remembers faster than the mind manages, a cold drop through the stomach before the reason gets fully placed. Recognition doesn't happen right away. Why would it? A girl in a doorway once, one of 100 people whose lives got rearranged so a stranger's numbers could look better on a page. Then someone nearby laughs and says the name, half admiring, half amused. The maid who plays like that. You must have heard, and Dominic's face changes. Brooke, he says, testing the name like an old debt. I knew a Brooke once. Ran a shop that couldn't keep its books straight. Went under owing half the block. He smiles, easy, practiced, a man who has told the story before and never once considered it might cost him anything to tell. Any relation? The room doesn't go quiet the way it did the night the cello got played. This silence is different, smaller, more curious than held. Everyone waiting to see what the maid will do with an insult aimed at a dead man she can't defend without making a scene. He was my father, I say. Ah. Dominic doesn't even have the decency to look uncomfortable. Then you'll know I'm not wrong. Both hands go very still around the tray, the exact stillness perfected over 6 years, the stillness that means an apology, an offer to bring something. The old shape of it rises in the throat, the practiced smallness. Saying it doesn't happen. He kept every ledger he ever wrote. Gets said instead. Not loud, just steady, the way a note gets held when it wants to shake. He didn't go under owing anyone. You closed the building out from under him with 30 days' notice and called it good business because good business was the only language you ever bothered learning. Dominic's smile thins. That's quite a speech for the help. I'm not the help tonight. Comes out from somewhere true, though its exact origin stays unclear. I'm his daughter. That's the part you don't get to erase just because it's inconvenient at dinner. The room has gone properly silent now, the old families watching with the particular attention of people deciding which way to lean before they commit to a side. Every eye in the room lands somewhere on the spot, and for the first time in this life, none of that weight makes anything feel smaller. This exact size feels, for once, like enough. Enzo crosses the room. He doesn't hurry. That's the thing noticed even now, shaking, pulse loud in my own ears, the way he moves like a man who has already decided something and is simply walking toward the doing of it. He stops beside me. Not behind me. Beside me, close enough that the old families in this room, the ones who have spent centuries deciding who gets to stand where, understand exactly what he's choosing before a single word gets said. Dominic, he says, you'll apologize to Miss Brooke. And to the memory of a man who repaired half the instruments in this city with more honesty than you've shown in a decade of dinners. Dominic's face does something complicated, offense and calculation moving through it at once. Your Majesty, surely you don't mean to make this a matter of the court over a maid's. She is not a maid tonight, Enzo says. She hasn't been since the night she picked up a cello no one else in this room had the courage to touch. Somewhere behind him, the old families exchange the kind of look that will become talk by morning, talk that will follow him for longer than one dinner, a king choosing a woman with nothing over men with everything, in front of the people whose respect took centuries to build. His jaw sets, and exactly what this costs becomes clear watching that. Generosity isn't being performed from a safe distance here. Something real is being spent, in a room built to remember exactly who spends what. Dominic doesn't apologize. He leaves instead, the sound of the exit swallowed fast by a room already choosing to talk about something else. Enzo doesn't watch him go. His attention stays here. I should have done that months ago, he says, quiet enough that it's meant for one person only. You couldn't have. My voice comes out rough. I hadn't asked yet. You didn't need to ask. Something in his face eases, the door off its latch again. Further this time. I just needed you to let me. The cello remembers what I try to forget, And standing there in a room gone soft with candlelight and the particular hush that follows a thing finally said out loud, forgetting it no longer feels necessary. A year passes the way years do when the hard ones stop getting counted and the good ones start. Saturday mornings belong to teaching now. In that same ballroom, children who arrive with borrowed instruments and no idea yet what their own hands are capable of. Father's words get passed on, that a good instrument tells you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. The rest stays untold. Not yet, not until an age arrives that needs it the same way. Enzo watches from the doorway some mornings, not interrupting, the same restraint that once kept him outside a drafty music room at midnight. Eyes meet across a room full of children learning to hold a bow for the first time, and neither one has to say anything. Both already know exactly what it cost to get here. Both already know it was worth it. There are other women in this city who carry a gift no one asked to see. Some of them are still folding it small. I don't know all their stories, but I know how it feels to be one of them. If this one found you, you'll know where to find the rest of us.